with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we've taken a couple of weeks off. It's always good to come back refreshed. I went out to the Central Rockies and had a wonderful time skiing. Spent in 10 days, I was 8 days on the slopes. And for a couple of those days, we had this massive winter storm that rolled through.
Which is fun when you don't have to live in it all the time.
Well, it's very fun when you're up on the slopes. I mean, that's what, the skier's dream is, like a massive snow dump or skiing during a massive snow dump. And really great stuff. But, but all that fun gave way to the Denver airport closing for 3 days, I-70, which goes from Denver up into the mountains. The tunnel you pass through there is called the Eisenhower Tunnel. And once that thing closes down, it's like there's nothing moving either east or west. And you just kind of like hunker down. But we were on a flight and supposed to get out of there and just to scramble and the mad scramble on top of, call it the perfect storm, to coin a phrase. It was spring break, right? So now not only do you have thousands of flights being canceled, you got the major interstate that you can't move and go anywhere. Pretty dangerous conditions, to be honest. Then you have spring breakers trying to get in and trying to get out. But nonetheless, a great time out west. I love the area. And where I was is in Breckenridge. I got to tell the story because we have a guest coming on from Texas. You would think in the town of Breckenridge, beautiful, beautiful old mining town, that you were in Texas. Because half the cars there had Texas license plates. I mean, everybody in Breckenridge is from Texas, I got to tell you. But what a beautiful place. And I'm glad that the Texans are there, and because they're wonderful people. And I think they're going to make it a better place. And so that's a wonderful way to introduce our first guest, Tom Lindsay. He's from the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Tom, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You wouldn't have happened to be in Breckenridge skiing because a lot of your Texas compatriots were certainly there.
No, I wasn't so lucky, but a couple of weeks ago here, I could have skied when we got once every 100 years snowstorm, and I woke up Tuesday morning on February 16th, and the temperature in our house was 36 degrees because we had no heat for 5 days in a row.
Oh, my God. Did you have broken pipes?
Fortunately, we avoided that, but it wasn't fun.
Lucky. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
And where in Texas are you?
Austin.
Austin? Wow, in Austin of all places.
You know what? And we all do business in Texas, and I love Texas. I think it's a great state, a magnificent state. And I can't imagine Houston being cold. I just can't.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston to me is 102 degrees. Everyone's underneath Louisiana Avenue in Houston Underground, and it's just roiling outside. So to me to see the pictures and the video, the optics of you guys freezing, it's just I felt so bad for the animals. I have to tell you that I felt terrible for the animals.
It really was a shocker. We're still recovering down here.
So, we got a really important topic to talk about with you, Tom. And in fact, you wrote an opinion piece for Newsweek. And the headline was San Francisco School Board Dances Atop Lincoln's Grave. And that's obviously to do with cancel culture. And not even Abraham Lincoln is safe from cancel culture. A guy that's done more for racial equality than any human alive. I mean, an amazing accomplishment that he's had. And to want to erase his memory. I mean, and Tom, cancel culture, it's not just about Lincoln. I mean, this is a much, much bigger issue than San Francisco trying to erase Lincoln's memory. from our history. I mean, this is a really, really serious issue, isn't it?
Oh, I can't think of a more serious issue, Neil. In fact, I conclude my piece with a question that I want your listeners to think about. And the question is this: has there ever been a country in the history of the world whose own taxpayers were forced to subsidize their schools teaching their kids to hate their own country? Because that's
what's going on.
Yes, that is what is going on, and it is metastasizing across the country.
Well, what I find absolutely astounding, and you're right, subsidize the schools to teach the kids to hate their own country, and tell the kids out there that Abraham Lincoln didn't care enough about Black Lives Matter and things like that. I mean, let me think for a second. Well, he lost his life because of it.
Yeah.
He went to the Civil War because of it. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation because of it, when it was totally impolitic to do that. And so if you can't get that, Tom, where do you go from there?
Well, you go down, and that's where this is going to take our culture. Because you're right, this is more than simply a San Francisco event. This is a nationwide effort to purge our country of any knowledge and of any admiration for our founding fathers, and of any knowledge and any admiration for our Constitution, the greatest political document ever written.
So, Tom, I mean, how do we deal with this? I mean, I'm even seeing some of the left-wing media, Bill Maher, from HBO, saying, "Look to the left. This is how Donald Trump gets elected again. You gotta stop this. This is absolutely nutty." And even from the left, you're hearing voices saying this is going much, much too far. It's a dangerous issue. We're going to lose our influence in this country, in political influence at least, if we continue down this road.
No, that's exactly right. And you have Naomi Wolf, former who worked for worked for Al Gore when he was vice president. She has said the same thing. Alan Dershowitz. So what you're seeing here is a split between the old-time liberals who still believe in individual liberty and free speech, and the progressives who have taken over the left. And the liberals are, I'm afraid, dying out.
And look at and Rich, look what's happened to the New York Times. I've never been a fan of the New York Times, but it wasn't the way it is today. I mean, it's just propaganda. Look at the Washington Post. I mean, these two great institutions. They're nothing more than propaganda. And you read about the inside stories that's going on at these newspapers and media outlets. And the older folks, the people who've been there for a while, are saying the mob is taking over. Yes. It's all these young kids running around. It's the mob taking over.
Well, I think you just said something there, Neil. The older folks aren't going to be there. They don't want anything.
They're being canceled.
That's right.
They may be in more ways than they think. But they're being canceled. They just cannot go forward with that. Listen, the thing that's amazing, Tom, is that to try and cancel out everything that we have in history that explains how we got here eliminates basically who we are today. We are a compendium of everything that's come before us. And to understand that, good, bad, or indifferent, you still have to understand we're all part of that, and it makes us what we are. It also gives relevance to what we're doing today, don't you think?
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. You said it very well. You can't know who you are if you don't know where you've come from. And students are being deprived of that today. I think that as far as the left is concerned, history began with the Obergefell decision, and anything prior to it is suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how about George Washington? Are we going to get rid of him?
Of course.
I mean, we've all been to Mount Vernon, right? I mean,
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
my personal hero is Jefferson.
They were Virginians. They were farmers, and they all owned slaves. I mean, Madison, Monroe. I mean, I guess the only guy that survives this is John Adams.
Right.
Who else?
Right. Well, Benjamin Franklin. He lived in the city.
Okay, so
he lived in the city.
Okay, so he was a Boston guy who moved to Philadelphia.
He
right?
commuted.
So that's all we're going to have left: Franklin and Adams. Is there anybody else who survives, Tom?
I don't know. This is terrible.
If this purge continues, the question of who was Thomas Jefferson is, in a few years, going to be on a trivia game. because nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to remember because it's not being taught. And if they think they know anything at all about him, it's that he owned slaves.
But Tom, to be fair, this is a San Francisco thing right now more. I mean, what we're talking about, I know that, maybe it's a Seattle thing and, you're going to have maybe it's going to be a Portland thing.
I don't know. Neil, I got to tell you something. I don't know if I agree with you on that. It is not anymore a Portland thing or a Seattle thing or something like that. I think it's everywhere. I think the ugly head of this prejudice shows up in the most incongruous areas. You just wouldn't expect it. You just wouldn't expect it. It's everywhere. And that's what scares me. Let me ask you this. This is interesting because I was listening to Fox and Friends one morning. They were discussing the War of 1812 in New Orleans. So you're talking about Andrew Jackson,
right?
So and so they're saying, well, do you think?
Oh, he's gone. Jackson,
wait a minute. They hate him.
Yeah.
They hate him. They don't even like their $20 bills
and
anymore.
He was, by the way,
they're burning their $20 bills.
He was the founder of the Democrat Party.
Yes, he was.
Exactly. But wait a minute.
Right.
Wait a minute. So they asked the folks in New Orleans, do you think it's fair to judge today's standards to something that 250 years ago? And you know what they said, the cancel guys? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The same social norms from 200 years ago were today. All these guys have got to go. Andrew Jackson's got to go. Can't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty scary stuff.
It's very scary stuff. It really signals the end of constitutional democracy in America if they are able to prevail.
Hey, Tom, we got to take a quick break. We're on with Tom Lindsay from the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He's a senior fellow there. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Tom Lindsay from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and we're talking about council culture, something very, very important. It is scary, scary stuff, and boy, do we have to fight back on this one. Rich.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this. I'm really excited Tom's on. Tom, I'm really excited you're on the show today because this subject matter has been so annoying me for so long, and I talk about it all the time. So, all right. So, Neil, if you remember, Tom, you weren't on the show a few weeks ago, but you are now. A few weeks ago, I made the comment in almost a jocular manner, and I said, I'm really worried. And Neil said, what are you worried about? And I said, well, I'm really worried because there's not going to be any more Mr. Potato Head. We're attacking Mr. Potato Head. And Neil looked incredulously at me like, what are you talking about? Rich, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know. I found out coming over here to the radio show that they're canceling out, no lie, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. They feel it's not fair because the potato may not want to be a Mr. The potato may want to be a Mrs. The Mrs. may want to be a Mr. And therefore, we have to go with an agnostic, androgynous sort of potato. And we all laughed about it, Tom, because that's really funny. But it isn't funny because now Dumbo is gone from Disney and Peter Pan is gone from Disney. Pirates of the Caribbean, they're really debating. All right, they can get rid of A Small World. I hear that song one more time, I'm going to kill somebody. That they can get rid of. 80 times with my kids, 3 kids, enough money there. But this isn't funny. Pepe, look at the conversations we're having. But this is indicative. Pepe Le Pew, a cartoon character, they're debating whether he's sexist. A cartoon character. I mean, these are nonlinear. This is ridiculousness. Tom, where is this going to wind up? I have to tell you, I take this very seriously.
Oh, you have to take it very seriously because this really is ground zero in the culture wars. Because really, in the end, what defines a people isn't geography, isn't population. It is what do they look up to? What things do they love in common around which they arrange their offices and honors? That's how you understand a political regime. We are taking down everything that we looked up to ever since the founding began. And in the process, we're not just replacing that with something different. We are replacing it with something that is absolutely opposed to the principles of the Declaration of Independence.
Well, you know what's interesting? This week, Governor DeSantis of Florida, of course, came out with an edict. I guess I don't know what you would use, what term you would use for that. Tom, what would that be? Sort of like an executive order for the state?
Executive order, yes.
An executive order. Well, there you go. It's a Biden moment. 69 and counting. It's a Biden moment, and he said, "Enough already. We're not doing this. The state of Florida will not spend any more money, taxpayer money, to teach our children to hate our country." That's what he said.
That's
right.
What
he said. This is a good thing, Tom.
That's right. And he's doing exactly the right thing, and God bless him for it. I mean, the use of any racial or sexual stereotypes should always be prohibited, right? Whether it comes from either side, right? Because they're both contrary to the Declaration's principle of human equality.
They should be, but who's the arbitrator? I mean, who ultimately is the arbitrator of that, right?
Well, I'll tell you something.
Who's the arbitrator?
Yeah, I mean that takes us to the issue that my organization, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, was founded in 1989 on one issue, and that was school choice. And that's the only solution to this, because trying to pass laws to get into classrooms to tell teachers, teach well, right? That can only go so far. You have to do it, and we have legislation right now that the legislature is looking at with regard to these racial and sexual stereotypes. But the bottom line answer is to give parents the freedom to send their kids to the school that they choose.
Well, that's a very important topic. But I think it's very convoluted. Even if you have an edict or an executive order, and as you're pointing out, Neil, that who's the arbiter of all of this? What you really are fighting, it's not just a school board that really needs to be not woke, but get back to reality. A school board that's controlled by a union, the teachers' union.
Yes.
The teachers' union has a tremendous lock on where we're going in this country. Look what's happening right now in Chicago and some of these other liberal cities. They will not open the schools, not because the board may not want to, although I think they're part of it. The school union doesn't want to go in, and they're saying we're not going to go in. We're not going. I don't care if you have vaccinations. I don't care if you have this. We want certain other requirements, including what Tom's talking about, this type of curriculum. We want political change along with our salary.
Yep, that's why I moved my family from Chicago down to Texas 10 years ago, because this has been going on in Chicago, and unfortunately not only in Chicago, for some time now. That's exactly right. I mean, in Chicago just approved what's called culturally responsive teaching. Now, when you hear that term, who could be against that? But the problem is, what it really boils down to, it's the 21st century version of racism. It's the 1619 Project, which argues that America is racist in its DNA, and that every white person today, whether they know it or not, is still guilty of racism. That's what's being taught to our children right now.
Well, and that's exactly, we can wrap up. We only have about 30 seconds left. And it's exactly what Governor DeSantis is saying. We are not going to teach critical race theory. He made that really, really clear. And other subject matters such as 1619 Project, which is predicated upon total lie.
And I can imagine a lot of other states will follow. I mean, a lot of other states will follow.
I would hope so.
Hey,
here's hoping, yes.
So, Tom, unfortunately, we're out of time. We're together right now with Tom Lindsay from the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Tom, thanks for being with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Rich, coming up, we have Alfredo Ortiz, a very good friend of ours. He's the president of the Job Creators Network. He's going to be on to talk about some of the Biden economic policies, tax policies, the stimulus policy. Are they helping? Are they hurting? A lot of really important information. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Thanks for staying with us. We're having a wonderful show today. Lots of very, very important topics, and we got a couple of more coming up. And to have a conversation with us right now, very fascinating, going to be on the Biden proposed tax hikes and what do they look like. I'll tell you right now, they're not going to be helping our small businesses, that's for sure. And as I said, we have Alfredo Ortiz, the president of the Job Creators Network, with us right now, together with Dr. Rich Rothman and I. Alfredo, welcome to Made in America.
Neil, thank you very much for having me. And Dr. Rich, hello. Great to talk to you.
So you published a piece in Breitbart, a very, very good piece. It was an exclusive interview with you. Biden's tax hike actions speak louder than his words about helping small businesses. So you got President Biden running around the country saying how he's just so compassionate and supportive of our small businesses. And then he goes...
Did you say Biden running around the country?
Well,
you haven't seen him walk off a stage? I don't want to say anything, but that optic kind of threw me, buddy.
I say that sort of metaphorically.
Okay, there you go. All right.
Certainly not literally. But he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Oh yeah, we love small businesses, but then we're going to tax the heck out of them, and we're going to take all their money so they can't invest in their small businesses anymore. So Alfredo, you've been a great friend to the show. We love what your organization does. Tell us about what Biden has in mind and how that's either going to help or hurt.
Well, yeah, Neil, it's just unbelievable. Every day when I can't think it's can't get any worse, it does. This time now, Biden this week starting to talk about the tax hikes that he's doing. And, we understand that he hates large corporations and he was going to go after them. I frankly never thought that he was going to go after small businesses the way he is. But bottom line, he's looking at reversing the 20% tax deduction that all of our small businesses absolutely enjoyed and leveraged when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed under the Trump administration. They, a lot of these small businesses reinvested those tax savings back into their businesses so they could hire more people, pay greater salaries, give more benefits, and now they're going to repeal that away. And then we hear the clarification. Remember, he says no one making over $400,000 is going to get, or less than $400,000 is going to be taxed. Now we're hearing it's households making less than $400,000. And when you think about small businesses, true job creators, a lot of these folks fall in these categories. And so what's going to happen? You start taxing away all those wonderful things that the tax cut actually brought, Neil, the higher wages, the more jobs, the better benefits, boom, poof, that goes away. And so, we are just unbelievable, and we are going to do everything possible to make sure that we stop that, because that is a complete attack on the middle class and our working class and our entrepreneurs of this country.
So, Alfredo, to get this through, and do you know the sort of the measure of tax hikes that we're talking about here? First of all,
well, I mean, if it reverses, we're going to go back. I mean, part of it is because of COVID. A lot of these small businesses, sadly, are now out of business, right? And so we're trying to go back and work with different folks and to get a better understanding of that. But, it's going to be much more than the $57 billion, roughly, the 2% of that passed just recently of the $2 trillion COVID relief bill. It's going to be in multiples of that, that the tax hike is going to hurt our small businesses. Right now, especially when jobs are needed, right? I mean, when jobs have to be created as part of the recovery, this is absolutely the worst thing to do. And our small businesses, of all the things to attack, when they're barely, they're really struggling to get out of this. I mean, they're hanging by their fingertips. To do this, it truly is like giving two anchors now to a drowning man. It's unbelievable.
But to get this through, I just got to ask this question because I just want to know the process here, and I got to get this there. They can do this through reconciliation. In other words, they can bypass the filibuster because it's a budget issue. It's a budget issue, and taxes is clearly a budget issue, right? So they need 51 votes in the Senate to get this through.
Yeah, and they've got that right because of Vice President Harris. And so from that perspective, they've got the votes to do it.
Well, I mean, technically they have the votes, but do they have the votes? I guess that's what I would ask you. I mean, there's got to be some Democrats out there that would see this as a real problem for the economy. And hey, look, they're going to have to go to midterm elections here before we know it. And, if you see this economy, come down to its knees that's not going to be good for those people who have to go out there and campaign and get reelected. Can they get the votes?
Well,
look, I mean,
go ahead,
Doctor. Well, no,
go ahead.
Say, look, the one thing the Democrats do a really great job is positioning, right? And they'll position this as, again, it's build back better. That's what he's going around. And to Dr. Rich's point, I'm not sure if he's running around the country. He's probably going from a podium to a podium, but not necessarily running. And it's, they're going to basically say this is what America needs. This is what the middle class needs. But, they know that they can safely attack small businesses because small businesses don't have a huge coalition, right? They have, fortunately, folks like yourself that allow me to be on air to talk about, the impact it's going to have on small businesses. But it's not like a big business that can, have lobbying guys going in, going out of Congress, trying to make an impact. So this is for them kind of, they say that they're friends of small business, but they're anything but that.
Well, exactly correct. I mean, if you think about it, even go back now that we've basically celebrated, put that in italics, a year of having the COVID in the United States, who really suffered as a result of the rules and regulations that the Democratic governors and those on the left side have initiated? It is not the large people, it's the small business. They have suffered dramatically, whereas the Amazons, the Targets, the Walmarts, the large organizations have done incredibly well. Just follow the money. They've done well, and it's almost as if they've been protected by the ruling class.
Well, the one thing, Dr. Rich, that I've said is that it's clear now to me that the Democrats hate small business. As much as they say they love them and they embrace them and, it's the heartbeat of America, they like big business. They like big tech. They like big banks. They like big health companies, health insurance companies, hospitals, right? Because they can corral them. They can control them. They can get in bed with them, right? They can't do that with small business. They represent everything that they hate. Freedoms and entrepreneurialism and the American dream, and they don't like that because they believe that the federal government. Remember the famous, we created that.
We built that.
Exactly.
Who built that?
Exactly.
That was Obama.
That was an amazing statement, and I thought it would absolutely explode in his face. And they spun it.
It wasn't the small businesses who built that. It was the government that built that.
No, they said you didn't build that. You did. I mean, that was just outrageous to any entrepreneur. You didn't build that.
It's unbelievable. And now he's going around, build back better. Well, it's building back federal government bigger is really what it is. And now, by the way, I'm not sure if you've caught this, but in that $350 billion that they're allocating to basically, the states that did the worst because they're doing it as they're using unemployment rates basically as their guide. So literally rewarding bad behavior, right, of these blue state governors. Right? Within that, they're basically saying if you accept any of that money, you're not allowed to cut taxes in your state. So for those red states that, let's say, do accept the money and want to give some of that money back, right, back to the people who've earned it, who gave it to the federal government and gave it to the states, they're not going to allow them to do that.
But, hey,
So
Alfredo, let's hold that thought for a second. That's very, very important. We're together with Alfredo Ortiz. He's president of the Job Creators Network. Still a lot more to talk about your money, about your jobs. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're together with Alfredo Ortiz, the president of the Job Creators Network, talking about your money, talking about your jobs, and specifically about the Biden proposed tax increases and also the stimulus and this $1.9 trillion of your money. Where's that money going to go? Well, we're just talking to Alfredo a moment ago, and he's talking about this money is going to the blue states, very, very poorly run. They forced their people into unemployment. And now they're going to be rewarded from forcing people into unemployment, creating an environment where they could not work. And now the federal government, your tax money that you worked very hard for is now going to go to fund their their mistakes. I mean, it's very clear shutting down the economy did not work. It did not work. And the
was unnecessary.
Rates, it was unnecessary. Okay,
yeah.
You look back, it didn't work. And once we knew that, and you follow the science, you say, okay, you got to follow the science. That sounds pretty cool. But now that we know what the science is, they're still trying to justify. They're still trying to justify.
Well, not that science.
Yeah,
not that science.
Let's still close down our restaurants. Let's still close down our hospitality. Let's still close down all of our travel and tourism and all of that. It's still not about following the science, but it is about coming up with these massive government bailouts to fund all of these mistakes that people made along the way. Alfredo, I mean, isn't that what's going on here with this $1.9 trillion?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like I said, all it's doing is rewarding bad behavior. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And you look at the money for the schools, right? About $190 billion now between all the COVID relief bills has been allocated to schools, and the schools are still closed. I mean, it's unbelievable. Where's the money going to? And some of that stuff, a lot of the money, in fact, doesn't even go into 2022. Does that mean that the teachers aren't going to go back till 2023? Because some of the stuff is retrofitting, for example, the schools to have cleaner air. I mean, good luck trying to find an HVAC technician. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's impossible right now to find a contractor, let alone enough to retrofit all of our schools, right? I mean, how many years are we going to keep our kids out of school? I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, that is exactly correct. What is absolutely interesting to me. I mean, look at the totality of what's been going on. I sit here every night and I try to figure out one thing that they on the left, Biden and his group, have done to really help America. So, all right, we're talking about the wealth tax, corporate tax, capital gains tax, stock market tax, estate tax, minimum wages against a small business. If you have a gain, now we all play the market. If you have a gain, you don't even realize the gain, Alfredo. You could get taxed on it in the Biden administration.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a paper
and by
gain.
the way, but by the way, how are you going to pay for that?
That's my point. It's unrealized gain. It's unrealized income.
Well, you got to sell your house.
Now you're going to have to right. You're going to have to sell your house, liquidate your assets, right? I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. And you haven't even mentioned the PRO Act, by the way, which allows.
Well, that's a good one. That's a great segue. Let's go there.
I mean, again, so yet another one, right? Like I said, I'm fired up, as you guys can tell. But the PRO Act, that's another wish list of policy changes that's just going to benefit America's biggest unions. I mean, we're going to go from pro-worker to pro-union bosses. This is a total payback to the union bosses, really.
Alfredo, that's 100% correct. You're trying to figure out where's the payback to these guys? Where's the money coming back to the unions for the massive support and whatever else they did for Biden in the last year and a half, 2 years? And when you look at the PRO Act, which is really ironic, isn't it? The PRO Act, It is a total capitulation to the unions, and it's a total turn down to the average poor guy and woman who's trying to make a living in manufacturing and any other organization that they're in. Maybe we should go over some of the horrible things that are in the PRO Act. Some of them are scary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, the biggest one, right, eliminates all state rights work laws. I mean, this is a huge thing. It makes it illegal to force an employee to pay union. It makes it illegal to force an employee to pay union dues as a condition of their job. I mean, this thing is the most craziest thing. I mean, an employee really would not be able to opt out, basically, if it's a union shop, right? They would have to keep paying the dues.
But Alfredo, didn't the Supreme Court already rule on that?
They did. That was a big deal.
That you cannot be forced to pay union dues. This happened to be government workers.
But what, a year and a half ago?
Like in Illinois and California, I think there were two different cases. Right. And in that, if you wanted to have a job for the state, they can't take money out of your paycheck unless you agree to it.
Well,
and the Supreme Court said that you can't make them do that because they're advocating with your money for positions that you might not support.
Yeah, and so that's what's going to be interesting about this is that they're going to have to go back. I'm sure this is going to go to the Supreme Court again, right? Because it's going to. I mean, some of these things are just ridiculous in terms of like the card check. I mean, that's the whole thing is where basically that would also eliminate the secret ballot elections when it comes to union organizing.
That's very scary.
I mean, I have to tell you. I mean, the list goes on with this. And again, I know we're talking about just these items. But then you've also got H.R. 1, which is all the voting rights, which will clearly change voting, across the country. And I have to tell you, Dr. Rich and Neil, one of the biggest things that are keeping me up constantly over the past several weeks is this filibuster thing. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, we don't have to worry about this because, senators."
Hey, Alfredo, hold that thought, because I think this is a very important issue.
It's a good segment,
because that is the thing that keeps me up at night as well. We got to talk about the filibuster, the talking filibuster. I don't know what filibuster, but the filibuster that keeps us safe. And if we get rid of it, that's really bad news. We're with Alfredo Ortiz he's the president of the Job Creators Network. Stay with us. Still a lot more to talk about.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Alfredo Ortiz, who's the president of the Job Creators Network. And just before we get started on the filibuster, and boy, is that so important, I just want to say I was with my daughters and granddaughters. We were out in Colorado skiing this past week, and they told me that you got the Generation X, and now we got this new generation, and you're talking about education, right? And this generation that's being forced to stay at home, and they told me that this generation now is referred to as Generation C, Generation COVID, and I just got to put that out there because that's really, really a big deal, and I think this is going to go down to, kids can't get educated, and kids are not getting educated. They're not socializing because of the teachers union keeping the schools closed, and the government, being right there with them, giving them all this money to stay at home and make all of these, perceived safety measures, which really it's a huge diminishing return, right? You're going to spend all this money and get no return out of it, and meanwhile you're going to have Generation C here that's getting uneducated, not socializing, and what's the future of America if our kids are not educated? I mean, this is scary stuff.
Well, Neil, it is in effect the 21st century lost generation. It could be a lost generation.
And the irony of it all, it's the teachers who are forcing these kids not to get educated. I don't know. That's the way I see it. But let's move on to the filibuster, because this is really a serious issue. And I don't know, Alfredo, the filibuster, that means that a majority, a very small majority, are unable to push through very, very controversial legislation just because they can by a hair, and radically change the country with essentially an evenly split country, not supporting half the country, more than half the country, not supporting the radicalization that the majority, the slim majority, is trying to ram through. And that's what the filibuster prevents, right? It prevents that. At least you have to have 60 votes out of 100. So therefore, you need to have you have to have a lot of support there in order to do some radical changes to our country. But getting rid of the filibuster means that you just need 51 votes in the Senate. You just need 51 votes, right. And you could just do anything, whatever you want. It doesn't matter what the history of this country is. You could just change everything in a moment. I mean, they could vote to say, okay, now we're going to confiscate everything, all private ownership in the country, and without the filibuster, they could get away with it.
Technically they could come in and say, we're going to nationalize your assets.
We're going to take over everything, and we're now a communist country. And so we got 51 votes, so now America's a communist country, and now all your bank accounts are frozen, all your money, turn in all of your wealth, turn in all your gold, turn in anything, turn in all your guns, turn in whatever it is. We're taking over everything. With 51 votes, we can do that.
Yeah, that's right. And I was going to say, historically, I mean, really, the filibuster was there on the Senate side. People in D.C. like saying, the House are kind of like the children and the Senate are the adults in the room. The House can do a simple majority and laws pass, bills pass, but they don't become laws until the Senate passes them, because that's when the adults take over. And you have to have more than just the majority. You have to have, a 60 out of 100, 60% majority on a vote, right? So which means you're going to have to pull people in from the other side. It was always meant to give the minority party, right, at any point, to give them a voice, right? To give them a voice, because you have to get 10 people from the other side, effectively, or you do have the supermajority if you happen to have full control. But it was really to try to prevent to just have a very simple majority be the total rule. So you get rid of that filibuster, then everything falls. And I keep telling folks, this is checkmate, right? If they actually successfully get rid of the filibuster. And right now you hear Mitch McConnell and other folks in the Republican Party say, wait a minute. When President Trump asked us to do this, we said no because we thought playing by the rules made sense and the Senate rules made sense. Do you think the Democrats care about this? Because they're looking at a golden opportunity that's probably presented to them once. And they don't. I truly believe that they feel as though once they pass the filibuster, they'll pass H.R. 1, which is the Voting Rights Act, as they call it, right? They'll pass that. It will fundamentally change voting in our country because it basically nationalizes elections, right? It makes mail-in ballots basically mandated to every single person in the country. So everything that was a disaster in the last election then comes true on a total national level. I just think they believe they'll always win the election, so they never have that now as a specter over their shoulder. So then they'll just start passing everything.
Yeah. It's sad stuff, Rich.
God, I was in a good mood.
Yeah.
But I think, no, he's right. Alfredo's 100% correct. It's sort of like the Electoral College protecting the smaller states. You get rid of the filibuster, who controls it? It's going to be California, New York, Illinois. Good luck.
And then without the filibuster, then they pack the courts.
Yep.
Alfredo, unfortunately, we're out of time.
And by the way, they also add 2 statehoods, right? They add D.C. and Puerto Rico. Don't forget that.
That's right. So now they got 4 more Senate seats. Alfredo, unfortunately, we're out of time. Alfredo Ortiz, president of the Job Creators Network, and Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time in the show. I know that you still had a lot more to talk about, but the good news is we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.